Hello, Bill. How are you?
Lots of stuff to talk about.
Oh, let me start off with some whoppers here. You're going to love this.
I'm sure you have some whoppers.
We have been watching the mind control, absolutely the most sophisticatedly exacting science of mass mind control and social engineering for years. We knew they had supercomputer models. We know that they've been studying Bernays, and it's advanced, tenfold since then. We know that Tavistock was the big key, and it still is playing a key role. But it's all about genetics now. And we know also that Google, the Google wives, even though one of the husbands was apparently unfaithful, the Google wives are involved in genetic research. They're involved with modifying DNA. Now here's a great one. Scientists identify gene which controls memory extinction. Think about that one. So they can give you something in the water. Yes, you got it. The spotless mind is coming. And this is a whopper. These things are going to be little nano things. They'll be put in the water or the air or the food, whatever. They'll go in. They'll take up residence in your mind, wherever they need to be in the body. They'll do their thing, and we'll truly have happy zombies. Idiots. We're here. George Orwell wouldn't believe it. He would. I always say something else.
Well, if you teleported him forward to our day, he said, I can't write that because no one will believe it in my day.
Yeah, well, there he is. Here's another little kind of a medical thing for you. As we know, there are in California 65 vaccines given, and I forget how many are in the pipeline there. Scientists discover blueprint for universal flu vaccine. Another winner, folks. They're going to I don't know how anyone's going to live past the age of 25. Well, they'll be happy if they die young. It doesn't matter because they'll have the spotless mind. Anyway, go ahead. What's up?
Well, the first thing that's happened is that we're detecting from my contact and here on my detector the highest levels of radiation I've ever seen for 2.5 years since Fukushima. That means there was a major release last week after the typhoon when they released at least 1,000. You can multiply that by whatever your imagination believes.
Okay, now what I want to say, though, excuse me, let me interrupt. Bill lives in Southern California, for all of you who may not know, in the San Diego area, which you would think,
the Marine Corps base.
Which you would think would have a very low average background. Should be 25 to 30.
Right, we don't even have San Onofre anymore. It's shut down.
Right. So you think that Bill's background counts per minute would be 35, 35, somewhere around there. Go ahead.
Yeah, before the Fukushima, it was around 25. Now it was running around, in the last few months, around 75, well, 3 times background. It used to be for the first 2 years of Fukushima, around 60. Now it's been running 75, and just the last 48 hours, it's gone to 100 and 120. That's when the doors were open. When the doors were closed, this happened on Sunday, I thought, oh. And we noticed that because it's fall, the wind changes direction, coming from the north primarily now rather than the south. We had a monsoon last week that was just ending, and radiation levels were relatively low in the 40s, 50s, a little lower than average. When the wind swung around from the north, wow, and it wasn't raining. We had a little rain about 3 or 4 days ago before the surge. So it doesn't have to be in the rain. Now, if you have rain, it really pulls it down, but it doesn't necessarily pull it down here. It can be over St. Louis or Austin, Texas, where the jet stream tends to track. It can be in Eastern Europe. And it can also, by the way, those radiation streams can go over the pole, transpolar to Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Russia, anywhere, China. And we always think that the air currents flow in the wrong direction, but there's cyclonic currents that carry it back over China. So within a week of the March 11th, 2011 nuclear disaster at Fukushima, they detected radiation in 22 provinces in China. The Chinese are no slouches because they built up in the last few years 35 new reactors. So they knew it wasn't their reactors. These are brand new reactors. So they knew there wasn't a breakdown, and they controlled those reactors. So what we're having, this disaster is starting to really get ahead of steam on. And their current plan is to put a cooling, you want to basically freeze the area, make a deep freeze in the ground, is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or the idea of pulling fuel rod assemblies when they now know it's publicly reported that the fuel rod assemblies have had a breakdown in the borinated rubber, so there's no actual decrease in neutron flux around any of these fuel rod assemblies that are bent, so they can't be pulled out freely. They have to be cut, which will start a pyrophoric fire. So we're up on it. What we're facing now is the background count for radiation is going to start climbing in bumps. And as it climbs, you're going to start seeing sea life die. You're going to start seeing bioaccumulation in people. And most people aren't aware of chronic radiation sickness. What do you think happens when people get chronic radiation sickness?
Well, they get cancer in many cases, and they die.
That's long before they get cancer. Cancer is basically an end stage. If you live long enough, you
they start to manifest all kinds of different illnesses.
Yeah, the first thing they do is they get confusion and they get memory disorders.
Well,
they can get numbness and polyneuropathy and vertigo.
Right.
They can get problems with pancytopenia, where their white cell count and their red cell count and everything drops, or hemoglobin. They can get radiation-induced visual problems, seeing and hearing. They can get problems with cutaneous lesions, like gum lesions, lesions on their skin. They can get leukocytosis, where the white cell count drops, and you start to end up with weird infections in funny places. You wouldn't expect that somebody's like terminal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Treatment, of course, is things like hyperbaric oxygen and chelating agents, and of course things like Nutridyne and Nutritrol to stop free radicals. Because once you irradiate tissue, the tissue itself starts to die. Set off what's called a death signal, which makes other tissues and mitochondria release massive amounts of free radicals. It's like a grass fire. And once the death signal starts to release in tissues start to get necrotic really quickly. So,
by the way, it's been proven that the death signature, the photonic death signature, will be actually picked up and followed by healthy tissue.
Right, but it also is not just across. It's not just across what I call it. Healthy tissue in the same person. People don't realize we are like cells in a multicellular organism, mankind.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to actually occur across society. That death signal will happen on a psychological, and a interpersonal and a physiological level.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is dying cells emit photons of a certain signature, and healthy tissue will pick it up and die, even though they're not necessarily infected with the same pathogen. It doesn't matter. My background up here is running 32 to 40, right around in there.
Yeah, well, you're relatively lucky right now. What happens is during the summer, the radiation tends to flow more northerly, and as we head toward the fall and winter, the radiation stream in the air, at least the troposphere, carries it further south. So,
you mentioned one thing. Let me go back to this.
Yeah.
This asinine, absurd ice wall the Japanese continue to talk about is so unrealistic and stupid. What they've done is they put a barrier in there, and they've actually rebounded some of the water back up in and under Fukushima Daiichi. Accordingly, the rains that recently fell from the typhoon, 17 inches on average, and the backing up of the groundwater now, not to mention the water being poured on what's left of the reactors on the top, and the leaking tanks, which are spraying all over the workers who walk next to some of them, I understand. Tanks which were so poorly assembled that the workers didn't even tighten the bolts around the bottom plates of these tanks. That's crazy. So anyway, the point is, as Arnie Gunderson said, and we've been saying it actually long before Arnie did, the plant itself, built on fill, is sitting on basically a big bowl of mud.
Radioactive mud.
Correct.
Yeah, and by the way, the corium, if it bumps together, it's like a lava lamp, and when the corium or radioisotopes bump together, you get a big surge in neutron flux and a big surge in gamma rays. And in fact, you can actually see at night literally spikes of gamma rays shooting up neutron flux.
We've
seen
it.
What it does is ionizes the nitrogen in the air, and you see a blue light spike, almost like Star Wars, like a light show.
Very interesting. Here's another quickie. Woods Hole, of course, very well known around the world, prestigious Oceanographic Institute. Ken Buessler was interviewed, senior scientist there. He said, there are some engineering proposals to try to divert the water, that's the underground water coming from the mountains flowing under the plant and becoming irradiated as it passes through the melted through cores, or block the water. It's very hard to dam a river because it's going to go around the dam or over the dam or under the dam. They're having the same problems between the reactors and the ocean at Fukushima, and now they're talking about an even larger engineering structure. 1 kilometer ice dams freezing the soil essentially to divert water around the site. That might reduce the total number of tanks you need, but it doesn't necessarily stop the leaks at all, because they still will be applying water to cool those reactors and the spent fuel pools.
They're trying to divert the aquifer, is what they're trying to do, but
can't
but
do
they
it.
Don't say that the basic problem is two enemies: water and neutrons.
Water is the heavyweight champ. It goes where it wants to go, ultimately.
Right, and the neutrons are the other one that they don't realize, that if you have a coring unit, you can't stop the neutrons. You're going to continue to have critical reactions.
Correct.
And the water, of course, is bad because when the zirconium doesn't have any cladding around it, you're going to get hydrogen production.
Well,
you're going to have hydrogen explosion.
Oh, the fuel assemblies, you told me the cladding is all but gone.
Yeah, it's all turned into dust and vaporized away.
Yeah.
That's why I describe things like the Bible. The Bible is a autopsy report, set of indictments, and a death sentence to those who don't have hope. Now, if you have hope, it means you have to have a relationship with the Creator of the universe. And I want to teach people a few things that are part of that 90% that I usually don't talk about, because our current world basically is a pretty godless world. Even the so-called people that are churched or believe in some form of social agnosticism or atheism or transhumanism, they don't really believe in a transcendent creator or that we're a higher order being. They believe that we're, in a sense, the mechanization of the human creature, that we're advanced biological machines that are either evolving or soon going to control our evolution through genetics, which is just plain stupid. Human beings are more than a physical being. And if you were to ask the questions from astrobiologists or astrophysicists, they'll tell you that the equations tell you that there's hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone that could support life over 1 trillion years. And that, in fact, it's very likely that if you look at a cosmos with roughly 460 trillion galaxies, at least in our known universe, the number of civilizations that could exist could be hundreds of billions that are advanced beyond the level in which they've extinguished life and they have some advanced intelligence. Now, I know a lot of people have a parochial view that their little local religion on Earth, whatever that is the do-all and end-all of the Creator of the universe, but they really would be very mistaken. The God of the universe is a very large God, a God who can incarnate as Yeshua HaMashiach, the Father in the flesh here, can be bring a witness of truth in any other world, and bring the truth to other beings, both the humanoid and non-humanoid, across the vast galaxy and the vast universe. Our universe is being watched, as it says right through the Bible, any ancient holy book, but our Bible is the clearest evidence by advanced beings. I mean, everywhere through the Bible, it tells you that we have interacted with fallen ones, or Nephilim, advanced beings we call angels, which just means messengers, and beings that have creative power or destructive power that's far beyond the imagination of the human. The problem is that people don't understand that our civilization has been steered by these beings, both good and evil, throughout our history. It's not something that's new to the 21st century or 20th century, where people start to pay attention to strange craft or beings just appearing. The fact is that people have known intuitively, even ancient or native cultures, that there's a hyperdimensional spirit world, that there's a reality beyond the current parochial reality we have. And very few people have glimpsed that unless they've died and come back. Some have a very brief experience of that. Others have a much more extensive one. I'm one of those ones that had a much more extensive one. And some of the things that I can't talk about many of the things, but I will talk about a few. The first thing, I want to give people hope. The earth will not be abandoned to the wicked. I hear a lot of people saying the earth is, bound for destruction. No, the earth is in destruction right now. We're about to be rescued. We're about to have an intervention. And we're not talking about ET intervention. We're talking about something far more advanced than that. We're talking about the angels or the witnesses, the beings of the Most High God, are going to intervene on earth because mankind has proven repeatedly he's incapable of rescuing himself. At the very least, a tiny minority get it, and the vast majority are becoming less and less conscious. In fact, if anything, they're becoming almost like cybernetic machines fused to their cell phone or their iPad or their HDTV or their computer,